All right, welcome everyone. Joining me today is Soraya Nicole. Say hi, Soraya.
Hi.
You can find Soraya at Soraya Nicole. You want to just spell it out for everyone because it's spelled a little differently.
Sure. It's Surya, Surya, Nicole, Nycole. And it's on all of the platforms that way.
Perfect. So today what we're going to talk about is just, being there for yourself, just emotional support. Because when you're going through toxic narcissistic relationships, there's going to be a whole whack of dynamics that are playing. A lot of them have nothing to do with you. They just have these, you're dealing with these emotionally immature people who act like children quite often. And, sure, they got adult bodies, but, they think like a child. And it can be so frustrating for an actual adult to look at somebody and look at the way that they're behaving, the way that they're acting, and still, you want to just reach over and shake them. But it's just like it doesn't work. And the fact that they're so good at triggering us, it's just like, there's a whole whack of coping strategies that I use, that Soraya uses, and we're just going to share them all today and just talk about it. There's people out there that just don't understand. They don't understand how toxic these people are, how manipulative they are, and they just see everything as a mess. And narcissists and psychopaths and sociopaths and all of these other opaths, they just have a way of just creating so much smoke and so much chaos and so much everything.
Right.
Even though that the blame can be set in some way, it's like we're not perfect either. And we have made mistakes. But whether the split is 90-10 or 30-70, what they do is they just kind of create this chaos and they make both people seem crazy, right? And in that chaos is how they thrive. So a lot of it has to do with just their mental ability to cope and process their own emotions, and they just don't have those skills, which is why they behave the way that they do. But that also leaves us in a wounded and a hurt place. And we have to do self-care ourselves, and sometimes it's really hard. It's really hard. Like what are things that you do? Like I use a lot of meditation. I use a lot of journaling. I have a big support network. Like what's your go-to?
Well, a couple months ago, I started what I call Self-Care Sunday, and so it is my day to just do the things that I want to do, like put a face mask on, wax my armpits, just like my lady care day. And now I actually incorporated going to therapy. So I go to therapy every single Sunday as well. And that has been helpful for me, especially in a healing process, because I'm able to have a day already set in my schedule that's for me. Because when you're coming out of these traumatic relationships, you just don't know where to begin with healing with yourself, and you've had so much focus on the other person. So when it's on your schedule, it's a little easier to start to get back in those habits of taking care of yourself and just doing whatever you want to do and not feeling like I have to clean the house today or I have to do all of these other things. It's okay for me to have me time, because I think that's one of the things that we lose the most in these relationships is ourself, and we have to start to begin to get ourselves back. So that's one thing that's helped me tremendously. And I like to say, like, I'm not going to cancel on myself. So my self-care Sunday is my self-care Sunday. So I'm not canceling on myself, and is, minimal or whatever, like that just sounds like very cliche or something like that. It actually holds a lot of weight for your mental, because now you're starting to tell yourself that you matter, and then you're starting to actually take care of yourself. And so it does subconsciously make a difference for yourself.
Yeah, one of the things that I notice, especially with very toxic narcissistic people, is the level of instability that they have, and just being in their proximity, it's like we absorb other people's energy. And when you're with a chaotic energy, it triggers chaotic energy within you, and there's things that are unresolved in our own psyche and our own well-being. And a lot of that stuff comes from like even deep down in childhood, patterns that have kind of repeated themselves again and again and again. And what I find is these breaks, like your self-care Sunday, it just allows space for you to be you, and being nice to ourselves. I don't know if waxing armpits is the nicest thing I could do on a Sunday. But hey,
I think it's a girl thing.
Yeah, maybe. But you know what? I'll try it this Sunday. I'll let you know if I feel pampered.
It'll hurt the first time.
It'll hurt the first time. Cool.
Yeah,
That's good to
know.
You get used to it. Perfect. Perfect. But it's like whatever your version of waxing armpits is, it's just like doing those things, like doing those things on a regular basis, cutting a break. One of the things with narcissists is that they just don't respect boundaries. And the only way that you can have a boundary is to enforce it yourself. And sometimes no contact is the way way to do that. And even when they're
Yeah.
gone, like when the narcissist is gone, our brains are so groomed to be running on that same treadmill that we've been running on for years and years and years, that even when they're gone, it's just like sometimes it takes a while for those wheels to slow down. And the way that we can slow them down is through going inwards. It's not so much about, like, narcissists they have an external locus of control, right? They go around manipulating everything, and if they can control their outside world, if they can control their environment, they feel safe, right? For us, it's just like we have an internal locus of control, which means we also have all these passions and all these, we got fears, we've got anxiety, we've got worry, we've got depression, we've got all of those things, like a normal human being does, and including them.
Right.
But the difference is, it's like we can actually be our own caretakers. Like we can actually sit there and hold ourselves. And there's different kinds of havening techniques that kind of work. There's different kind of tapping that really works. And connecting to just larger groups, because at the end of the day, what we are is social creatures. We're animals, and we regulate based on a pack. If you look at like a little child, a child can't emotionally regulate. But when you pick up a child and you soothe the child, they will use your energy to emotionally regulate, and eventually they learn to emotionally regulate on their own. The thing with narcissists is they never did that. They were like, the world doesn't trust me, and I have anger, so I'm going to make everyone angry. I feel sad, I'm going to make everyone sad. And where it's just like, if I'm feeling angry, it's just like, okay, I'm going to let myself feel angry. Well, let's see what's underneath that. Where's that actually coming from? How long have I felt that? What was the trigger? How do I dismantle the trigger? And instead of reflecting back, if they're angry, and they of course they're going to make you angry. And if you reflect it back, then they were right to, because it's just like it worked. Because it's just like, there's anger, and now you have it. And there's a sense of relief on their face when they see that they've triggered you in exactly the same way you want to do it. And one of the ways of just navigating and negotiating with narcissists is they don't get to see those emotions anymore. They just don't. There's going to be an invisible wall, and it's not like we're not going to have them. We are going to have them, but we're going to have safe places to do it. And it may not be with family and friends and your coworkers and all of those other things, because a lot of them don't understand the level of abuse and the level of the bonds and the trauma bonds. In order to break those trauma bonds, it takes a lot of internal work. It takes a lot of internal support. Once you do the work, the strength and the courage and the resilience that you have. Because here's the thing: if you can survive a narcissistic relationship and thrive afterwards, what else could possibly get in your way? Like, honestly, like that probably the most difficult thing you'll ever have to do. Good, done. What's next? What else can you do now?
Right. Many of us have already been, whole, like we talked the last time about, being a whole person, and that, narcissists don't discriminate. They like the weak, and they like the strong. So nobody is safe from a narcissist, first of all. But coming out of it and then going through your healing, you will bounce back. You may not be the exact same person, but that core of who you are as a beautiful soul and somebody who's happy and loving and free, or that definite core of who you are, is going to come back. You just have to nurture that side of you. We can't dismiss the past. I think a lot of times we say, oh, you're never going to be who you were because once you go through trauma, you're completely changed. And yes, trauma does change us. It changes our brains. It changes the way that we perceive life and all of that. But at the same time, who you are is still inside. And so I like to focus too on some of what are the things that bring back my innocence of who I am. What did I like to do as a kid? Did I like to go bike riding? Did I like to go rollerblading? Did I like to paint? What are the things that brought me joy and light? And so when I remember those things, and then I start to do them again, and sometimes trauma is surrounded by that, because narcissists will use the very beautiful things about you. And then now that you're not with them, you have a fear of going towards that, because there's a trigger now with something beautiful. And now the only way to remove that trigger with something beautiful is now to do it again on your own, to bring up your innocence, to, let that come up, and just slowly do it, piece by piece. It may be hard to start coloring because they called you stupid and thought you were a child because you enjoyed coloring or painting or whatever it was. But the more you do it, the quieter their voice gets in your head,
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of what you're talking about are just like inner child wounds. And the whole thing is like, sure, if you have an inner child that's wounded and it's crying, it's emotional, that's reactionary. It's just like, when a child cries and a parent holds them, the parent is the one that's regulating the child. Children don't actually have this ability, but they will process their emotions and then, they scrape their knee and then cry like they were almost murdered. And then, they'll stop crying and then they'll go back and play. Like it's that quick. If you actually see how quickly emotions, we can process them, in a regulated environment, it can be much quicker. But in order to do that, We actually have to create like a part of our own personality. And, I've called it the inner parent. Some people call it divine mother. Some people call it, just any kind of higher force, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, all of those things. And it's just nurturing that part of ourselves. So when we do just get dysregulated, there's actually a calm part of ourselves that says, oh, no, I see you, Miles. I see you, Soraya. You're hurting right now. Like, you're really, really hurting. How do I hold that? And one of the things I always find is before you can process emotion, you have to hold it. And sometimes these emotions, they just get so overwhelming that it's before they'll even, because they overwhelm us, right? We become reactionary. But before we can work with it, we have to just kind of come back into ourselves. And that's where, mindfulness is a really good job of just creating this little bit of a separation. That's where exercise is amazing. Staying hydrated, one of the best things that you can do. Because a lot of this, because the adrenaline, the cortisol, if it's in there, if you're in fear, if you're in panic, if you're having all of these things, you have adrenaline and cortisol. And the whole thing is like when they do trigger you, it can take, an hour to 2 hours just for the adrenaline and cortisol to wear off. Now, if you start ruminating and you start feeding that even after it's gone, that 2 hours of this adrenaline and cortisol, you can now make it 6 or 8 or 12 or 18 or 37. Like you can just keep growing that even when they leave. You can just keep playing the conversation again and again, and your brain doesn't know the difference between a story and what's actually happening. And if we can just kind of sit and go, this is my brain telling me a story. This is a story. It's not real. It's not happening again. Yes, it did happen. It happened over there. But here in this moment, I'm safe. Look, I got plant right there. I got another plant up there. I got vase with rocks in it. Like these are all just kind of like, hey, these are solid things that I can anchor to before I'm ready to kind of go in and process this bigger emotion. And it takes time, it takes support. And quite often it's like the community, having a support system, like you were having a therapist. Like I have a therapist, I actually have a coach. I have, and it's just like, I kind of need all of these supports because in my own head, because these are problems that the mind created, right? These are mind created problems. And the mind isn't always able to separate itself. With a support system, someone else can see it, because from your point of view, it's just like the world's over, I'm in crisis. Someone else's point of view is like, is it really? What's actually happening? Right. And it's just like other people have the ability to see things that you don't in your own life. Like I went for a walk today with a friend and realized there was a pattern that I was just repeating again and again, and he realized he had the exact same pattern. So then we're just like, oh wow, this is a trauma bond. Oh yeah, that's a narcissistic mother wound that we're both dealing with. Oh my God! And it's just like, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not the crazy one. I'm a little crazy, because we all have to be a little crazy. It's
all a little crazy. Yeah, it's the fun part of ourselves. But I like what you're saying with the. With that realization and the support, when you have supportive people that are, maybe they don't understand, but at least are willing to walk with you while you walk through this, because my therapist she understands full spectrum of what this type of manipulation and trauma, all of the things of that, which is, you have to really do your research to understand these kind of things, right? But now if I go and explain it to a friend or a family member, it's like, well, why didn't you leave sooner? And why didn't you this? And then I'm starting to be questioned. And so I found that a lot of times what I did was I wouldn't say anything to anybody. And while that ended up secluding me, I did it out of a protection place, because I didn't want to be further traumatized by my trauma, because I was trying to heal. You know what I mean? And so when we have these other people that can have this safe space with, as well as have that open mind, like your friend, like those are the most amazing type of conversations, because I can have an open dialogue with you. You're going to also you're self-aware as well. So that's like the best type of person to be with, is somebody who's self-aware, because even if they don't understand or they're not recognizing the exact same thing that you're recognizing, they know how powerful it is of what's going on in your mind. And that gives you more peace and space to continue to unravel a lot of those things, and that, it's so hard to find people that are self-aware. So you are so blessed to have somebody like that.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's like when I was in a narcissistic relationship, many of them over the years, probably most of my life, I didn't actually realize it, because that was my normal. And part of it was like from my childhood, because I was normal as a child. And, if that's what the world is like and I'm a child, then that's just what the world is like. My coping strategies back then was empathy, was just trying to like, I have to pay really close attention to this unstable person, because I need to be able to protect myself. And I need to people please them, because as long as they're happy, they're less likely to abuse me. And eventually that wears off because the abuse just keeps escalating and escalating. Narcissists is just it's more. Like, if you give me more this week than last week, you must love me. If you give me less, you must hate me, or you will be punished. So it's just like you can be giving out 98% of your energy, and they'll be like, yeah, that's better than the 95% last week, but what are you going to do next week? I want 110%. And then you give them 110%, and then it's just like, I want 500% now. And it's just like, at some point you reach the limit of your own compassion, and that kind of leads to self-compassion as well, to knowing that when someone else's energy is draining you dry and you're losing your identity. It's like, even working with new clients, the first thing, and even in my own recovery process, the first thing was just like, I gave up so much of myself at the end of all the different relationships over the years. It's just sitting there thinking, it's like, then who am I? And that's kind of a magical moment, like when you get to that part of the recovery process to where you realize you've lost yourself to a relationship, and then you kind of go back and you look, and then you can ask that question, it's like, who am I? And the answer back is, who do you want to be? Who are you meant to be? And then it's like, it's starting with a clean slate. So yeah, you do have to process all the trauma and let that go. And then once it's processed, then it's just like, all right, how am I going to present myself to the world now? What are boundaries going to look like? How do I say no to these toxic people again and again and again? And how do I be in an environment with them while you can tell that they're toxic, you can tell that they got this anger, they can tell that they're like, hey, I spent years making you angry and I felt better. And then and then they're like, now you're not going to make me feel better? Why aren't you getting angry? It's like, because I'm not. And this is your problem, man child, girl child. It's I'm not your mommy, I'm not your caretaker. You know whose caretaker I am? I'm mine, right here, this guy. I take care of him. And at the end of the day, we are responsible for ourselves. And we will be reactionary because we're human. We will be reactionary. But every single time that we're reactionary, there's a key there. There's a little silver lining in the dark cloud that's just going to guide us through. And it's not so much what we went through. It's more about what we overcame. And it's like what we rose up from. Just because narcissists have this way of knocking us down. You know the secret of life, the real secret of life? Is when you get knocked down, get back up. Because to succeed in life, all you have to do is get back up one more time than you've been knocked down. And you might get knocked down again, but all you have to do is keep getting back up. And every time you get back up, even if you look at getting knocked down, where's the strength actually come from? Falling? There's no strength in that. You know what takes strength? Getting off the bloody ground. So you got to do a crunch. You got to push your whole body weight up. And you got to stand up strong. Like that's the emotional whirlwind that we end up going through. But that's also where our strength and where our resilience comes from, and our ability to see that this tactic keeps repeating itself. Maybe I'm going to respond differently next time. Maybe I'm not going to respond at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you were saying about getting knocked down. It's one thing when you're coming out of that narcissistic relationship and then you do the no contact and you can just like completely cut them out of your, there's just nothing, there's no strings, there's no divorce stuff to deal with or a child, things like that. But when you're still partially attached to them in some sense, that's what it feels like, especially initially in the beginning. And it's like you're already feeling very weak and vulnerable, and then you have to deal with them on some level for some reason, right? And there's going to be they're narcissists. They're still going to be narcissists, and so you're starting to get up and you're wounded, right? So I mean, like, how strong are you? I look back on that, like, how strong am I to still get up even though I'm wounded, right? And I'm still getting up and I'm not giving up, and then they're right there to like push you right back down, and so you can feel very exhausted, and like it's just I'm never like, what is even the point in getting up? There's times for me that I felt like that, like, what is even the point of me getting up? What's the point of this fight? And sometimes you need to just lay there for a second, have your moment, cry, and then you'll regain your strength. And like you said, then you start to learn, okay, this is the pattern of this. So like if I react, because sometimes even if you react in a very gray rock way, that's still, they're always pissed off. The gray rock, it's not like any of these things are necessarily going to work for them to change their behavior, but it's going to work for you to be able to protect yourself, to instill those boundaries, and for you to actually break those patterns and grow. And so when you do that over time, what I found years ago with the gray rocking and just focusing on what exactly the topic was, absolutely no emotion, was that while it infuriated the other person and was, kind of scary, I've dealt with, scary narcissists who are ragers and who can be, that's the reality of narcissists. They can be violent and aggressive, and it can be very scary. And a lot of times what we did was, to be safe, was we just appeased them, and so now you're not appeasing them. And so it's scary for you too. But the more you do it, the more you'll realize that they're not being fed, right? So we can talk about narcissists not being fed. And when they're not being fed, and they're getting more frustrated. Now, I hate the fact that they're going out and they're abusing somebody else, but they're not abusing you, or you don't have to let the abuse happen to you anymore. So you're actually taking back control over the situation, regardless that they're losing their mind and going bananas. You, by gray rocking, are actually taking control of the narrative and which way things are going to go. And you're not engaging in that back and forth, because it always comes to that, because that's what they want. And when you're not engaging in the back and forth, and you said what you said, you don't need to respond and say it 500 other times, because they're going to keep picking and pushing. But those things, when you start to do those over time, what helped for me was that gray rocking really helped to separate me from that trauma bond, that even though I didn't want to be there anymore, they still wanted to be there, right? So I'm not feeding them anymore. And so they're just like falling off in a sense. They'll never be nice to you later. And if they are, that's a narcissist's tool, is their kindness, right? But you will have the stability in your life now that you needed by having control over that situation with your responses and how you're responding and what you will do and what you won't do. You are starting to instill your boundaries again, and they can just be mad over there in the corner. Let them be.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And you know what else I really find? It's like, yes, they go around looking for triggers. They had, and they've actually done that their entire life. They've repeated these stories again and again and again and again. And when they don't get what they want, you know what they do? It's like, that. I'm the victim. Oh my God. I treated you badly for so many years and then you said no. How dare you? You're an awful person. You said no to me. Just keep giving me what I want. That's it. And just like that. And then you're kind of like looking at this as like, wait a second. It's like they're looking for me to be their savior. They're looking for me to turn into some kind of superhero and fix them from a problem that they created. Like their life is their problem that they created, that they've actually repeated again and again and again. And what they've always looked for is that savior to step in, to just rip their heart out and throw it on the ground so they don't get their feet wet. And then you take that away and they're like, my feet are wet. Yeah, but you've kind of done this your entire life now. And it's actually not my job to fix you. And yes, like you said, it's like they will terrorize, they will terrorize your friends. They will terrorize your coworkers. If you got family with them, if you have kids with them, they will absolutely go into your child's mind and manipulate it. They will and just continue to gaslight everything, and they repeat the same lie again and again so many times that they actually believe that it's true. And it doesn't matter in defending yourselves against all those things. It's just going to suck your energy dry. You're going to feel like a victim, right? Because it's just like, oh, this narcissist keeps repeating these lies again and again and again and again. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, let them. Just let them. By surrounding yourself with a support system, people that you believe. Like, yeah, flying monkeys are difficult, because when your own child becomes a flying monkey, it's just like, whoa, how did that happen? It's just like, no, it's okay. It'll come time. There's a child yet the brain hasn't developed. As they get older, they'll be able to figure things out on their own. It's just like, I'm just gonna smile and nod. I'm just gonna hold you. I'm gonna help regulate you. And and quite often, especially with children, it's just like children are a lifelong commitment. Like, they're going to be your children forever. Right. And yeah, right now the divorce is going to be really hard. Yeah, the separation is going to be really hard. Yeah, custody access, it's going to be difficult, because any form of drama, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. But if you can find that strength, and you can find that resilience, and talk to people that are going through the same thing, emotionally regulate with other people that are kind of going through the same thing. It's you can see the bigger picture. And yeah, they look for vulnerabilities. Yeah, it's great. Guess what? You wanna go through therapy for 2 years, and a therapist will tell you what all your wounds are, or you can spend 12 minutes with a narcissist, and they'll just pick and prod, and they'll make you angry. And then if you actually take that anger and try to process that, all of a sudden it's just like, well, they know my weaknesses. Cool. What if I fix those weaknesses? If that kink they found in my armor isn't there next week, what else do they got? What else do they got? What else do they got? And eventually it's just like you end up becoming a superhero in your own right, because it's not so much that you're gonna their arrows that they throw at you, or the bullets that they try to shoot into your heart aren't gonna hurt. They are gonna hurt. But the goal isn't necessarily to be Iron Man. The goal is to be more like Wolverine. It's just like, yeah, it hurts, but I'm going to heal it, and the bullet's going to come out, and now it's healed. And you can do that quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. Like I remember, like early on in all my separations, it's just like it would take, one trigger could take me 2-3 days, a week sometimes, to kind of process. Now it's just like, all right, actually, there might be a night where I only get 4 hours sleep because my brain just was ruminating, but I was able to pause and stop and say, all right, it's okay to ruminate. You're right, you're absolutely right. And eventually it lets go. And then the next day, it's just like, cool, I'm moving on. Because in this moment I control this moment. I can't control the past, and I can't predict the future. So there's a power in that.
So what are your coping things that you do? What are some things that help you?
Doing things that are just for me is, I don't wax my armpits often enough, apparently. But it's just like, like exercise is a big thing. I took up boxing a couple of years ago, something I did a while ago. And it's more of a core workout than anything else. People are like, oh, boxing, you're a tough guy. It's like, yeah, you ever been to a boxing class? It's 25% skipping, and it's 25%, burpees, and it's 25% crunches. So, then you get to hit a bag a little bit once in a while. But for the most part, it's just building up your core, and it's kind of like a metaphor for even the healing process. Is you have to build up your core. You have to build up your core, and then when you have to throw a punch, you're going to be strong enough to throw it. If you have to take a punch, you're going to be strong enough to take it, and you're going to have the skills to be able to duck and dodge, and have that sense of resilience. And other things is have a bigger network of good people. What you're going to find is there's going to be people that just continually drain you. And once you kind of open your eyes and you start to see narcissists in your world, you're going to start to see them in your workplace. You're going to start to see them in your friendship networks. And once you start to see those, it's just like, all right, I have this main core wound that probably comes from childhood that I got to deal with because there's a relationship. But if you can kind of deal with that, and then all of a sudden all these smaller, lower level narcissists no longer are able to trigger you. And people get really upset. Like, people get really upset as you're going through the healing process. They're like, what do you mean? You used to come over and help me with the backyard chores every once a month, and now you're not going to? It's like, no, I'm not. You've been using me for all that time, and you haven't once come to my backyard. So it's and they'll be like, but that's the deal we made. It's like, all right, well, I no longer adhere to any covert agreements with any other person, and it's not just people at the highest toxic level, but there are the lower level toxic people in your life. And what you end up happening is the more you say no to things, the stronger your boundaries are, and the more you can actually start to say yes to things, but actually mean it. Saying yes to things is a great coping strategy when you're in a toxic environment. You need to just get through the day, get through the week, get through the month. Just agreeing. But you're also giving up yourself. You're giving up yourself. And if you're going to say yes to something, you want to make sure that it's going to reward you back. Narcissists are energy vampires. They'll suck you dry. You'll be like a raisin by the end of just emotional maturity and ability. So it's just like, rehydrate the raisin, man. Just grab that syringe, put in a whole whack of love, get a whole bunch of people in your life that give you energy. And once you have that network, it's just like when things start to go wrong, it's like, all right, it's not just my problem anymore. I have a community, I have a support system. And that's like even with Narcovery. It's why we have groups, why we have regular meetings. It's like, why we connect between sessions. It's because you need to feel like there's somebody there that understands and has gone through it, which really speeds up the recovery process. And eventually what ends up happening is you begin to be that person for yourself. It's like, oh, I recognize this emotion. All right, this is what I need to do to fix it. Oh, that didn't work this time. All right, I'm going to try something else. Maybe I'm going to do some tapping. No, that's not going to work. All right, I'm going to go ride my bicycle for 16 hours.
Right.
That doesn't work. All right, maybe swimming's the way. Maybe a journaling exercise is what it is. And eventually it goes away. And, all of these things were just little pieces of it. They're dismantled. And eventually you're free.
Yeah. I know when I began to start my healing process, I had a lot of panic attacks. When I was starting to set boundaries or starting to do things that were good for myself, fear out of what was that person going to do to me. And then also just even when I was just doing something for myself, I had panic attacks of I'm doing it wrong because that voice is still in my head that I'm just, worthless. I'm not good at what the things that they put into your head. And then having support and having other people that understand definitely helps you get through those times, because I think a lot of times, I think everybody's like this. When we get hurt, we just want to heal like tomorrow, right? And especially coming out of these relationships, they're so traumatic. We just want to come back out and like, oh, I just want to live my life in peace and everything. But it really takes time, and so you have to have like that grace and mercy with yourself. That okay, I'm taking one step today, and I'm doing this, and it's knowing that it's not going to solve and fix everything. That you are going to have to do this over and over again, and it's going to feel very uncomfortable initially. But that just because, oh, well, I did this, and so I'm supposed to feel better, and now everything's going to be okay. No, it doesn't work that way. In the beginning, it takes a while. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes a year. It depends on, if you have to deal with that narcissist, or if you don't have to deal with them, but everybody's healing time is different. And at the same time, what this trauma does is it brings up a lot of your other trauma, so it's like, I have to deal with the triggers that my other trauma came up with and the current trauma. And sometimes you can just feel like you're drowning in triggers and you're just drowning in trauma. And it feels that way and it sucks. But trying to remember that it's just right now and it's just today, rather than this is my entire life and this is what my life consists of and this is all that I have. Not making those decisions while you're in those triggers, because we can definitely get to a place of, feeling really bad that we're at like the lowest point of depression, and we know where that goes, and so we have to remember, like, this day sucks. I hate crying. I hate all these triggers. I hate feeling like this. I don't have the energy to put my boundaries down. I don't have the energy to talk to anybody, but I'm gonna cry and eat ice cream today. I'm gonna, like you said, I'm gonna do things that make me feel good. I'm gonna, find a boxing class, or I'm just gonna sit on the couch and watch television, for the day. Those are the things, like when it's like those really, really hard, bad days, it's okay to be crying. It's okay. It is okay. You're doing the right thing and you're in the right place. It's okay.
That's right. And the whole thing is noticing when we're reactionary, and what you really hit on in early on in recovery is just like we become reactionary and we make decisions in the moment that we shouldn't have made, and we end up regretting them later. Mm-hmm. Sometimes saying, I need more time to think about this, I'll get back to you. Like, narcissists are really good at pressuring you into answering right now. Give me. I decided I want this. Give me. And you just want them to stop, so you agree.
Right.
And then you regret it later. So one of the things is just like, you do have to take, even with your own subconscious mind, it's like trauma, I'm sad. It's like, that's our own minds. Like, yeah, I see you're sad. I see they're hurting. I see that I'm hurting, and I see these emotions are here. Absolutely, but I'm not going to jump and make this decision, that decision. I'll get back to you later. And quite often that is the healthiest way to go. And it's also the difference between, a calm no and an angry no. It's like, no, I will not, blah, 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 blah. And you can say, no, I will not do that. And they can go up and go, blah.
Yeah, but they get off on the response of you getting angry about it. So if you can start to stop responding in that, manner, then, it's kind of funny, because it's the same thing as when a narcissist will be like, you need to go to therapy, you're crazy, right? And then we go to therapy and realize we're not crazy, it's really that we're dealing with the narcissist. It backfires on them. So it's the same thing with the way that you respond. When you don't respond in that angry manner, you're actually learning and teaching yourself patience, boundaries. You are strengthening your mind, even for, like, if you think about, like, well, how's this going to benefit me in the future in my real life? Well, I mean, people drive, nutty on the road, so now you're even strengthening that part of, like, this person's frustrating me, but I'm not going to let it get to me. And so there's a lot. I mean, I hate to say that there's benefit from dealing with a narcissist, because it is so painful. But when you start to come out of it and you start to see how incredibly strong you are, that's the beautiful thing that comes out of it. Like, I always felt like, I don't know how much more I could be stretched. Like, I didn't think I could be any stronger of a person. And honestly, I'm tired of the trauma, and I don't want to be traumatized anymore. I literally want to live in a land of rainbows and unicorns, and I just want to, like, eat cotton candy and just everybody be nice to each other. And you know what I mean? Like, I am ready for that life, but unfortunately we have a lot of unhealthy and unhealed souls on this planet, and we have to encounter them, on an almost daily basis, and that'll trigger your narcissistic trauma that you received also. So, we have to strengthen those muscles so that we don't get down too deep. And something else that is, I found that has helped me, I also do, like, Reiki and hypnosis. So I do it on myself. And what helps with even just, like, say if I'm at work and I'm noticing that my energy is being, like, pulled. So I'm very conscious of my energy now. And what I'll do is I will just sit, and I will even just do a mindful, like, cord cutting of whatever that is that's, like, pulling from me. Something else that helps me is, even if I'm just sitting in the car or whatever, you can pull up a whole lot of meditation videos on YouTube, even just sound healings and stuff. And so even if I'm in my office and I'm feeling really overwhelmed, it doesn't help to add, like, really rough music to your situation. Sounds really do matter, and even, like, the vibrations or even the words, So I'll find music that is more calming and healing. And I found that meditation music, without the guided meditation, can be extremely instrumental in helping to bring our levels down, our energy levels down, and to help us to get back to a place of, like, bringing ourselves together, like you were talking about, like, with grounding earlier, to where am I at, like, what's near me, touch the grass, do all of those kind of things. And music can definitely help to ground you and to bring you back and calm your brain down from being in that chaotic space, from the trigger. So that's another thing that I found that's helpful. Meditation is, I'm not going to lie, I did a meditation yesterday that opened up the floodgates for me, which I was like irritated throughout the day then, because I was like, I did my meditation so that I could like heal this stuff, right? And I should be feeling fine. But the reality is like today I feel better because I did, with the meditation that I did, I was able to get out and release a lot of stuff. Now, yes, I lost a day to crying and being kind of stuck in my space, my head space, but I also had a lot of realizations. I'm able to count on people that I can vocalize that to when I'm ready, because I tend to hermit. And it's meditation, while it can be scary, it's a practice that is definitely worth starting and not being hard on yourself for, because it definitely helps to bring yourself into you. And to touch on what you were saying earlier about, I don't know who I am. Like, where's your foundation at? Like, okay, all this stuff has happened to me, but especially if you've experienced child abuse, what's my foundation? What am I supposed to go back to? And you really do have to recreate yourself and like learn who you are and what are the things that you want, can accept, and are not going to accept. And that's what I found meditation has really helped me with, is to be able to get to my core and to be at peace with myself, and knowing that I am being who my authentic self is, not just what society expects of me or what my abusers expected of me or what the courts expect of me or anything like that, but just to figure out who I really am, be at peace with that, and accept myself,
Yeah, absolutely. And I find, I'm a hypnotherapist, so it's just like I find it's an amazing skill to share with clients and others. But even like with my own meditations, quite often I find the more difficult ones are the ones where I grow the most. A lot of people think it's just like, oh, I'm going to meditate and feel euphoria. You do once in a while, but the practice is not of that. It's mindfulness. And here's the thing, and I think it's named wrong. Mindfulness. It's like, no, we don't want to mindful. I want to be mindless. So it's eventually just losing the mind. Like, we all have an ego. We all have to just kind of weaken that those old patterns that just kind of we get these neural pathways that are linked, and they're linked through trauma. Our brains forever change after trauma. Doesn't mean that our brains can't rewire themselves around the trauma, and we can build out these little loops and different other options. So then when you get triggered, it's just like, all right, well, I've got 4 other routes, or I can repeat what I did before. And so chances are, more often than not, so I have 5 options, and one I do all the time, and I got these other 4, I'll try one of those. And eventually your life just gets better. And it's not like there's a clear map or clear direction, because there isn't. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to learn from them. You're going to make another one, and learn from it, and make another one. But it's just the mistakes aren't going to be as big anymore, and they're just going to guide you in different ways. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. That was like so informative. It was just like all these different kind of coping strategies, and they were just we just kind of touched on a whole whack of them. But I hope what you found from watching this video and just kind of hearing us interact is that, you're not alone in these old patterns. They can be interrupted. First, we just kind of need to hold them. And whatever that holding environment is, it could be with a group, could be through meditation, through hypnosis, through all sorts of things. Exercise, staying hydrated, because, cortisol is in your body. Water helps you get rid of it. But the more of these coping strategies you have, the better life kind of gets. Thank you so much, Soraya. It's like at Soraya Nicole. I'll put a link in the descriptions, and thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Bye, Miles.
Bye.